Hi, everyone. We're gonna get ready and collect a few more folks, and then we'll get started.
Hola a todos,
Okay.
estamos aquí esperando a algunas personas más y ya vamos a comenzar.
Okay, while we're here, though, we do have a couple questions for Dahlia that were left over from last time. So maybe we'll take advantage of our time. And Dahlia, if you're ready, one of the questions we got last time was, what is your take on seeking general operating funds?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to see folks. I hope some of you are returning from last time, and welcome any new folks. Last
Eh,
time was our introduction to grant writing 101. And we did have that question about general operating funds. Wanted to just mention that general operating support funds can be used anywhere in the organization, just in case people aren't familiar with that term. More and more funders are beginning to be open to making those types of grants, which is awesome, but it's still pretty rare. So whenever you find a funder explicitly saying that they offer general operating support, that's a great opportunity to speak with them and possibly pursue that type of grant. Some funders don't want to get too much in the weeds of your work. I found that that's especially true for corporate grant makers. So that may be another general operating support opportunity, but most funders are focused on providing project grants.
eh,
And
¿Quieren
they may
interpretar?
not be open to more general funding. So
Would you
the
like
deal with that is they want to get to know you and trust you.
would you like
So
interpretation for that as well? Into Spanish?
Elizabeth, do you mind just a brief summary?
Yes. Había una pregunta de la vez pasada acerca de fondos generales de operación. Y básicamente hay algunos financiadores que sí estarían interesados en eso, pero no están necesariamente interesados en todos los detalles que tienen que ver con... I was trying to follow through, but I wasn't sure if you needed interpretation, so I was having difficulty understanding whether or not you wanted interpretation for that part. I'm sorry.
That was
Sí,
I can-
Marcy podría, Marcy, could you follow through on that? Thank you so
I can
much.
complete it. Basically, Dalia ha estado diciendo que hay algunos financiadores que hoy en día están ofreciendo fondos para financiar los gastos generales de operación. Esa no es generalmente la manera en que ellos trabajan. Sin embargo, hoy en día sí se encuentran algunos que están ofreciendo ese tipo de fondos, financiación de fondos.
okay, so the last thing I wanted to say about that is we talked about other funding streams last time that are not grants. So I would suggest that those probably would be your best bet for general operating support, in addition to whatever few general operating support grants you find.
Y hablamos de otras fuentes de financiación fuera de las subvenciones o becas y diríamos que esa sería la mejor opción para obtener apoyo para gastos de operación general.
all right. Thanks, everyone. I think we can get started. Well, welcome, everyone. It's really great to see you all. This is the second session of our 2025 Grassroots Convening Money for the Movement Grant Writing Fundamentals. We're really excited to have you all here. The Rose Foundation is an environmental foundation based in Oakland, California, dedicated to supporting grassroots initiatives that inspire community action to protect nature and people's rights. And my name's Aurora. I'm one of the program officers at Rose Foundation, and I work particularly with our grassroots grant-making funds here at Rose. We're really excited to bring you all this series. And today's session is going to focus specifically on finding funding opportunities that are the right fit for your organization and doing all that important but often forgotten work of building relationships with potential funders. This is the second of 4 sessions on grant writing strategies for grassroots organizations. Next week, we're going to be talking about budgets and financial statements. And we're going to end the series in the first week of November with a live grant review panel, where we'll have actual program officers reviewing actual applications and giving advice about what makes a strong grant proposal. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you'll join us for those sessions as well. And if you miss a session or are unable to be with us, you can always check out the recordings and the resources on our website. All right, so without further ado, I'll get us started. Pass things over to Dalia Masachi, our trainer for today. Dalia, thank you.
Waiting to see the presentation, and here we go. Almost there. All right, great. Welcome everybody. And today, as Aurora said, this webinar is all about spending the time to find funders whose grant portfolios and strategies align well with your organization's priorities and values, also called a match. Let's go a little bit to the next slide, Aurora, if we could. Yeah. So I wanted to start out just getting a little bit of a read on what people are interested in learning today. So if you could take a few moments just to type something in, your top priority for today. And could someone read a few
Yeah,
of them too?
we're getting a bunch. How to research without spending lots of money, finding micro and mini grants, how to find grants that will not be affected by federal cuts, ways to find funders, finding grants for nonprofit food pantry, researching how to approach building funder relationships, finding legitimate funding, many, many more.
Okay, great. Well, that sounds like what we're about today, so that's great. We will not be talking about specifically about federal grants. So that should be, not a concern at this point in our webinar. We're primarily talking about foundations and corporation grants. So they probably, they're not directly affected by federal grant, federal cuts. Okay, so let's go to the next slide.
Sorry.
It's okay.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So
I'm gonna get it.
You probably have figured out that I'm very big on preparation. So that is, again, what we're about today. So in webinar number 1, last time.
Sorry, Dalia.
Not quite there yet. Okay. Yeah.
We
talked about grant writing in a general sense. And today we're all about getting specific for each funder that we're interested in. Please type in your comments or questions as they come to you, and we'll get to them at the end because we have some time set aside for that. Okay, this is today's agenda. What funder prospect research is all about, but how to prepare, databases and websites. Then we're going to talk about prioritizing and scheduling. We're going to talk about cultivating funder relationships, and then we'll have an exercise with one brave soul among you has volunteered to work with me, and then we're going to break out into breakout sessions. And then we're going to be talking about customizing your work for specific funders. Okay. On to the next. Okay. Now you probably recognize this graphic if you were here last time. In webinar 1, we focused on the foreground steps, the steps in blue, green, and red. Today, we're going to look at the background on this graphic. That is the ongoing steps, the research funders, and cultivate relationships. And they actually inform each other. So let's talk a little bit right now about researching funders. As you know, there are literally tens of thousands of grant makers in the US. And as a grant seeker, you could waste a lot of time and money unless you zero in on the select group that's most interested in your work. Now, it takes a lot of research to find that match, the right match. You begin to cultivate relationships. Talk about that for a bit. We'll be talking about both of these things a lot in the coming slides. Another word for cultivating relationships is schmooze. And this fundraising really is all about relationships. You need to build trust. And to do that, you need good communication. We started talking about this a little bit last time. This step, the cultivating relationships, usually involves the ED, the executive director, the program director, the development director, and another huge piece of this is board members. I mentioned last time that they're part of what I call the grant team, and you should find out if any of your board members have connections to foundation staff or trustees, and if they do, they should be involved in the grant seeking process. This step is critical because it often means the difference between a rejected anonymous proposal and a familiar funded proposal. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so let's do a brief poll here. How does your organization currently look for funding? I'd be interested to know.
Sorry, let me pull up the right poll.
There we
Okay.
go.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, folks. Give it another 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to close the poll.
All right. Well, we have a nice split here. We've got the majority of people. We only pursue opportunities as they randomly pop up. Then we have some people have a systematic process. Great to seek out funding. And then we wish we had a better plan than our current one. Okay. We are going to address all of that. I hope that people who tend to have a randomly kind of random pop-up situation will get a little bit more organized from what we're talking about today. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so my question to you, or to kind of think about, is every grant opportunity a good one? Probably not. It's probably not appropriate for your organization. And we talked about this last time. I strongly believe that it's not a good idea to apply to any and all funders. That is what I call the shotgun approach. And I think it's a total waste of time, money, and energy. Instead, you need to look carefully for a strategic role that your organization can play in each funder's world. And if you find it, great. That's a great match. If you don't find it, don't worry about it, just move on. Because remember, there are so many other funders waiting for you to research them. So don't waste your time on those. The field is called funder prospect research. And it's very large. So understand though, it will take time and practice to work through it. So it will take time, but you can, get started now. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So your organization looks to you to help them strategize on which grant opportunities should they pursue, which should they not pursue, and when should they pursue them and how. You'll need to know things like what programs are currently fundable at the dollar levels that you're seeking. You'll need to know whether your organization's issues of concern are under the radar or if they're controversial in the funding world. Sometimes you may find that to be the case, and if you do, then you may have to do some funder education before you make your big ask. You also want to know if your organization can expect, what is out there in terms of grant seeking. What can you expect over the next, say, 6 to 12 months? And what is the possible return on the investment that you would be spending? Again, we talked about this last time, that the effort that you spend, the time, is it really going to be worth all that much for the amount that you're looking at for the funding? Let's go to the next slide. So let's prepare for the research we're about to do, and I broke it down into 5 easy steps. This is going to get a bit technical, so please bear with me as we move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is step 1. Identify a high priority program or project that you're fundraising for. So it's not just kind of anything and everything, it's your priorities. And you want to know the approximate budget size of that priority. We talked about this in webinar 1. So examples might be a specific program that you want to continue or you want to expand. You might want to do a collaborative project with another organization. You might have a new program that you'd like to seed with seed funding, it's often called. Only some funders offer this, so that's a maybe, but if that's something you're looking for, then you want to be very specific about that. And then we just talked about general operating support, and only some funders offer this. So again, that should be on your radar screen. Finally, another type of grant that is often looked for is called capacity building. Those grants tend to be as a result of a pre-existing relationship that you have with a funder. Not always, but that is a consideration, kind of similar to a general operating support grant. Now, in webinar 1, I suggested that your organization's strategic plan of any kind will be helpful to demonstrate to funders that you're competent and credible. And your strategic plan can also help you identify programs and projects that your organization prioritizes. You can then research funders that may be interested in those plans. So if you have a strategic plan, that could be part of this step 1. Okay, so let's move on to step 2. In this step, you're going to be brainstorming keywords and phrases for each priority program that you're working on from different points of view. Okay, so I would suggest that you think about your geographic location. Where is this project happening? Who are you serving? The population, the community that you're serving or is involved in the work? What needs are you addressing? And then the type of solution that you're bringing to the table. Now, in this step, I encourage you to be as specific as you can. Sometimes people think in broad categories like environment or education, and those are good starting points, but you want to dig deeper. You want to get as specific as you can. those general terms are probably not going to be very helpful to you. Okay, step 3. You want to list your current and recent funders and the corresponding grant amounts. You're going to use this to try to find similar funders to them. Remember that you get to define whatever recent means to you. Sometimes people think about funders from 5 to 10 years ago or just 2 years ago. It's going to depend on your work. If it's really, if it changes really quickly, then you're not going to be looking at funders from 10 years ago necessarily. Okay, let's move on to step 4. Okay, so in step 4, you're going to list your similar organizations or your collaborators. What are some other organizations in your area, your city, your state, your region that do work similar to yours? And maybe you're even working in collaboration with it. That's great. You'll want to research who funds them, because they might also be interested in supporting your work. Let's move on to step 5. 5th and final step, list any funders that you need to avoid for any reason. Sometimes this comes up in terms of conflicts of interest, concerns about government or corporate funding for your work. Example of this would be you would want to avoid greenwashing, which is increasingly common. So just keep that in mind, that you want to avoid, if there are funders that you want to avoid, you want to be clear on that. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now that you know exactly what you're looking for, let's move on to prospective funder databases and websites. That's where you're going to be looking. To do this right, you will need to call forth your inner Sherlock Holmes, as I call it. If you like treasure hunting or following clues to find needles in a haystack, this is exactly up your alley. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay. You're going to need access to at least one funder database. And there are many out there. They range from completely free to highly paid subscriptions. And the free options, whoops, not sure what happened there. Can you go back up to 15? Oops.
Sorry, Delia.
It's okay.
Too far.
No.
This one. Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Free options, unfortunately, tend to be less organized. They're probably not very thorough or updated either. So they tend to be, not the best, and they tend to be more difficult to use, less convenient. So I would recommend that you look in the workbook that I provided for this webinar. It includes several database options. Some are free, or or they may have free trials, and then they go into a little bit of a paid subscription model. So today, without getting into the weeds of any particular database, I'm going to give you some suggestions. So let's move on to the next. Okay. Orient yourself to whatever database it is that you chose. Compare the keywords that we just came up with in our preparation to those that they use in the database. How can you use their language to talk about what you came up with in your brainstorming? Look up in that database, go ahead and look up your current and past funders, which you've already listed out. And notice what keywords they're using in this database for those funders, because those are going to be key for you. Check for any specific software tips. Sometimes software will have a guided tour to show you how to use their software. Going on to the next one. Okay. At this point, you'll need a place to compile the data that you're about to find in the databases. And you'll find in the workbook, which we'll look at in a little bit, you'll find a link to download what I formulated, the prospect research worksheet. It's in your workbook. You'll get that link on page 2, the table of contents. This worksheet will become really important to you as you go forward in the prospecting arena. It will allow you to keep track of your funders as you research them and as they award you grants. Just to note, you may end up using another workspace. There are lots of good ones out there, but I highly recommend beginning with something like this prospect research worksheet, just to get a strong handle on the types of information management that you're going to have to do. You know, you may end up moving into another system, which is great. You know, if you can afford that, excellent. But this is a good free option just to get started. You'll see several tabs along the bottom of this spreadsheet. It's just an Excel spreadsheet. And it includes researching the funders you're going to be researching for the initial names and websites that you're considering. And then you move them on to different tabs as you learn more about them. Feel free to customize the tabs that you'll see in the worksheet to your specific programs. So for example, if your organization runs a lot of distinct programs, you may want to make a new tab for each program or a whole new spreadsheet for each program. Another sequence or configuration may work for you, so I encourage you to take what I provide and customize it for your own needs. Let's move on. Okay, so enter as many of once you're in the database, enter as many of your search terms as you can and see what comes up. Also look up the funders of the collaborating and similar nonprofits that you've listed out in your preparation stages and find out who their funders are, and consider, are they appropriate for you? Maybe so. It may be a good idea for you to link up with those collaborators or similar nonprofits. You may want to go after a collaborative grant with them. That's another idea. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Yeah, okay. Here we go. Sometimes an opportunity just falls into your lap. That's great. These are often called requests for proposals, or RFP. They're usually released a few weeks or a few months before the deadline. And just a reminder about this, you're trying to find funding for the high priority programs in your organization, right? The current programs or future programs that you'd like to start. I don't encourage you to do what they call chase after the money. You don't want to do that. That's not a good idea. You will find that you're getting yourself in trouble if you do that. So I encourage you again to, if you see an RFP coming your way, read it carefully and see if it's a good fit with your organization's work. If it is, great. If it's not, pass it up and go on to the next thing. Okay, next slide. Okay, now that you've done your what I call the first pass by listing funders that appear to be in your ballpark, it's time to dive a little deeper and start the vetting process. Okay, so you're looking for funders that are the best matches for your program, project, or your organization. So ask yourself a few questions. When you look for each funder, when you're vetting a funder, think about these things. Do you qualify given their eligibility requirements? Sometimes they can be a little sneaky. So check out all the eligibility requirements. Even if you think you're eligible, go ahead and read through it and make sure that it's correct. Next, do their objectives match yours? What is the funder really interested in funding? And what are they trying to achieve with their goals? Sometimes they will say that in the RFP. Hopefully they will. If they're not really clear, go to their website and see if you can get a little bit more information about what they're really looking to fund. This specifically, you want to ask yourself, does this specifically add to, I'm sorry, let me back up here. Pay close attention to whatever the funder publishes and their grant making strategy. Again, you may have to go to their website to find out what their strategy really is. Then decide if you share those inclinations and think about what special role your organization can play in that funder's world. Again, you might have to go get a little bit more information than just what's on the RFP or just on the listing in the database. I often will do this process in terms of getting my first pass from the database, and then I move off of the database into the websites of the funders to get more information, get my vetting chops really honed in. Okay, next. Yeah, so you want to find out if they funded projects like yours in the past few years. In terms of the subject, the size, and or the location. If they're local funders, they probably are going to be interested in funding only local projects. If they're statewide funders, then they're interested in statewide projects or programs that can be replicated throughout the state. If they're national funders, they usually want to fund national projects or projects that could be replicated across the country. Okay. Next. Okay. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say about that, about the looking at their strategy in the past few years, corporate funders usually fund where they have facilities. Right, so they're looking to make investments to help their businesses, just in terms of PR and marketing and their employee volunteer opportunities. So again, keep all of those things in mind when you're looking through what funders have funded in the past 5 or 6 years, or just a few years. Okay, now onto the slide with a dot. Once you've collected information from your chosen databases, you'll want to review the websites, as I said, to collect more information, because databases can only tell you so much. So as we discussed in webinar 1, funders change their priorities a lot, right? And you need to get the most up-to-date information that you can find. So for example, during the COVID pandemic, a lot of funders shifted their funding strategies to fund COVID or fund emergency work. And their websites were the best way to learn about that, not databases, because databases, were created maybe 6 months to a year or more ago. So you want to find out what funders are funding right now in an up-to-date fashion. I have one thing that really sticks with me about funders' websites when you go there is a lot of funders these days are including what they call an eligibility quiz at right there on the site. So they will do a preliminary screen. They'll help you figure out, are you even eligible for this? And if they have an eligibility quiz, I encourage you to take that. That will help give you a sense if you're barking up the wrong tree, or if you should continue looking at that specific funder. Next slide. Okay. This brings me to the idea of prioritizing your prospects. Let's move on. Okay. So prioritization questions include the following. Does your organization or anyone on your staff or your board have an existing relationship with the funder? If they do, that's a plus. How competitive are you in that particular funder's world, given what you found in your research? What is your estimate of the likelihood that they're going to fund you? Again, according to all that you've already found out about the funder, what they funded in the past, etc. If you have to choose between a low likelihood grant that's large and a high likelihood grant that's small, which one would you choose? Again, it's up to you in terms of the types of work that will be involved in both types. If the grantor has two funding priorities related to your work, which should you choose to apply for? Question. Right now, though, as you're doing the research, if they do have more than one funding priority that's related to your work, you're going to note that down in your prospect worksheet for a decision later on. How much grant writing and management time is required for each particular grant? Again, thinking about, is it really going to be worth it? Remember, when you're starting out, it's totally okay to only seek small grants with few management requirements, or few, not a lot of work. That's okay. You'll work your way up, or you'll decide, we don't have the capacity to pursue these larger grants with more intense work. That's okay too. Okay, moving on. Okay, at this point, you will have found some funders that look pretty promising, and those need to be moved over in your prospect worksheet from the researching tab into the current submission calendar tab. They're going to form your running list of good prospective funders that you're planning to approach. You're now ready to determine your strategy and timing for approaching them. You may need to consult with your other grant team members on this process at this point. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, timing. Of course, part of the planning process is also strategically timing your grant applications. Now, some funders only provide grants once a year. Could we go up one more? Back to the timing. It's okay. Whatever. That's fine. Some funders only grant once a year, and some have 2, 3, or maybe even 4 grant cycles per year. So again, that's something that you want to note in your worksheet, and that will be part of your planning process. Okay, next. Now we're ready for the next. Yeah. Okay. So when we're thinking about the timing of the applications, think about things like, is the program that you're thinking of funding, that you want funding for, is it developed or is it ready to make the application? Maybe it's not. Maybe you need to apply at a later date. Maybe it's just it has pieces that need to come together before you're ready to go after the funding opportunity. Another question, does your organization have the capacity, tools, and stakeholders that you need to carry out the proposed program right now? Maybe you need more time to get those things together. Does the deadline for this particular grant allow enough time to create a strong proposal, including pre-submission contact or funder cultivation that you may be able to do? If not, again, it may be important to wait and do it slightly later. Do you know yet enough about the funder so you can, make a good ask? You may need to do more research. You may need to do more cultivation of the relationship. All of these things kind of help in your planning with the timing. Now, you may find that you actually need to move certain funders around on your worksheet. You may realize that they're actually kind of a lower priority, or maybe they should be scheduled for another quarter, or maybe even next year. There's a tab to do that on the worksheet. Or maybe you'll find that, you know, this funder, after all this stuff that I've looked into, they're not really appropriate for our work. Maybe not appropriate ever, or maybe not appropriate right now. Maybe they might be appropriate in the future. So again, there you can put that on the worksheet. There's a tab for that. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. Some other notes that I wanted to share with you concerning prospecting. I would recommend to prospect research proactively and at least 1 to 2 times a year. So you're kind of set aside time to do some thorough research. It is an ongoing process, but it's good to kind of have it on your plate, you know, once or twice a year as a real project that you're doing. Sign up for all the grant alerts and new listings that you can as you come across funders through databases or through, you know, newsletters or however else you find out about them. You want to get on their list. Ask your grant team colleagues or board members to look out for funding opportunities in the community. So they may be thinking about collaborators. They may be members or know of civic or professional organizations that offer grant opportunities. They may know about local businesses. All of these things should be kind of on your mind for, again, your grant team colleagues, including board members. If they find any of that information, they should forward it to whoever's, you know, the main grant contact. Also, your current funders, ask them for referrals. They talk to each other. They know about other funders. So ask your current funders. I would also recommend creating a folder on your computer for each good prospective funder. I like to call this the intelligence dossier. It's kind of the place that you keep all of the funders' data, so you can access it all at the same time. Just so you know, this business of funder prospecting, it's really a science and an art. So it's going to take practice, and you will improve the more you're connected to people, to funders and other collaborators, the more opportunities you're going to hear about. So it builds on itself. Okay, let's move on. So once you've done the research and you have a few prospective funders in mind, you may have already started this, and I hope you have. You're ready to cultivate more funder relationships.
I think we're hearing the Spanish in the English channel. Sorry, Dahlia, would you repeat that?
Sure. Once you've done your research, the other piece of that is cultivating funder relationships. So once you've done your research, you'll kind of know who you want to cultivate relationships with, your prospective funders. So rule number 1, never approach a foundation without doing your homework first. I'll just repeat that. Never approach a foundation without doing your homework first. This is actually a long-term activity, and it needs to be done throughout the grant writing and management process. But the initial research that we just talked about, that is important to have before you start talking to the funders. Okay. This work, again, falls most heavily on the person on your grant team whose role is called the relationship cultivator. The person, if you were here for webinar 1, you'll remember we talked about that as a role on the grant team. But again, it could be anyone, and it should be both the people on staff and or board members. Okay, moving on. Okay, as I kind of mentioned a little while ago, funders talk to each other. They've been around the block, so it's always a good idea to be honest and upfront with them, and don't try to get around and cut corners or anything like that. You want to be upfront. You want to be transparent with them. Next. Okay. At this point, you've identified why you think this specific funder would be a good match for your program, but, oh, sorry, I went ahead. I want to do this poll. Okay. Poll 2. What are some ways your organization has engaged with funders before, during, or during the proposal process? I'm curious.
All right, 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Here are our results.
All right. Wow, a lot of people have met them at an event, webinar, or social media. Awesome. Meeting through referral. Great. Cold email. Yep. Okay. And then, or cold phone call or other. I don't know what the other one was, but do we know what the other one was? Aurora?
Let me check. All right, submission based on publicly advertised RFP. Sending funder our newsletter and annual report.
Okay. Okay. Great. So these are kind of public information. Okay. Excellent. That's good. I'm glad that people are already moving in this direction in terms of meeting them in lots of different ways. So perfect. Thank you. Okay. Now, at this point, you've identified why you think a specific funder would be a good match for your program. But the question is, do they agree? That's what you need to learn, along with any missing information that you were not able to get from your own research. You'll want to have an initial conversation with your intended grant maker before you submit the LOI, if at all possible. We talked about that last time. If their website suggests a preliminary phone call, or if they promote the idea of contacting them, consider that an invitation to a conversation. Definitely do that. So that means that you're not going to be waiting until the day before it's due, right? The day before the deadline to actually think about this application, because you're going to want to have a conversation with them in advance. During the conversation, which is going to last for about 5 minutes, you're going to try to find out if it makes sense to submit an LOI. Whoops, what happened? Not sure what happened there. Did the PowerPoint not work, Aurora?
Or are your slides dropped out? One second to come back
Oh wait,
online
I'm all
here.
muted. Sorry. Let me get us back to the right spot. I apologize, everyone. All right, here we go. Share. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Great. So for this conversation, we're gonna get ready to do some work on this. And it's gonna be about 5 minutes that we are gonna plan for that conversation. So I think we're a little bit behind time. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so this is just a list of potential ways that you could meet them in person. And already we heard from the poll that some people are already doing these things, which is great. attend meetings, conferences, introduce yourself, learn how you can make their world and work easier, then follow up with a warm call or visit at a later date. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to say about when you're meeting with them kind of casually or at conferences or webinars, that's not the time to ask if they will fund you. That's the time to start cultivating a relationship with them. Find out, again, find out how you can help them and if they might be interested in a follow-up call with you. So that's kind of the limit to what you want to do when you're just doing an initial meet with them. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so you may remember last time we talked about, or in webinar 1, we talked about making a plan for your grant proposals. And I used the acronym FIRST, and I'd like to just review it really quickly right here because we're going to be using it again. So the F is for facts and figures, the context, the problem that you're working on. The I is for the importance of the issue. Why should they care, right? So what? Yeah, this is going on, but so what? R for results that you envision. What results are you trying to get with your program or organization? The S is for the solution that you're proposing. There are many ways to tackle the problem. Why did you choose the solution that you chose? And finally, T for track record, also for testimonials. It's how your organization has already made a positive difference in your community. So that's just a refresher on FIRST. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as you prepare for your conversation with a grant maker, put together a brief document that you can use as your talking points. And you'll see in part 2 of the workbook, I offer exactly how to do that. Hopefully some of you had a chance to look through that. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so Roselyn, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Roselyn. Abisamis, maybe? Let's pull in Roselyn. Hi.
Hi.
How do you pronounce your
Abisamis
last name?
Bell. Abisamis Bell is my last name.
Abisamis Bell. Okay, great. Thank you. And she's from the Sama Sama Cooperative. Roselyn has generously offered to be the brave soul with us today to do a sample call with a grant maker. And are you ready, Roselyn?
Yes.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
trying to be ready, yes.
I'm going to play the role of the grant maker, and she's going to be the grant seeker. We are going to see if she can share with me her FIRST in about 5 minutes, and then I'll give her a little feedback, and then we'll break out into breakout groups so we can all have an opportunity to be part of this. While I'm doing it, I would love everyone else on the call here to be an observer. So listen very carefully for what Roselyn is saying and what I'm saying. And we'll have an opportunity to give some feedback to both of us afterwards. Okay? All right. I am going to turn it over to you, Roselyn.
So just to clarify, I can use the sample script that's in the workbook.
You sure can.
Do you need
Yep.
to know what or what funder you are might be, or does that?
Yes, I'd love to know if you have a funder in mind.
I have a funder in mind.
Okay.
It's the California Tahoe Conservancy.
Okay, and can you tell me, like in one sentence, what they're about?
Yeah, well, the particular fund that I'm looking at is they are trying to make greater access to the Lake Tahoe Basin to underserved or underserved populations. Just that's a real snippet, but they're part of probably, I'm sure they have broader reach, but I'm particularly looking at their vision about that.
Okay, all right, great. So we're gonna do this as a phone call. So Rosalind, give me a call and we'll go from there.
Good morning. Hello. I'd like to, may I speak with John Casey?
Yes, hi. This John Casey is not available today, but I am his assistant, so I'm happy to help you.
Wonderful. Yes, I'm calling with Sama Sama Cooperative. Oh, excuse the background. Sama Sama Cooperative. We're an organization based in the Bay Area, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about the fund that's the grant fund that's the Tahoe for All grant program. Excuse me, in order to better our to see if there's good alignment in applying for your funds that you're offering through this
I
program.
see. Well, I actually have a meeting in a few minutes, but I'm happy to speak with you briefly about that.
Great, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we can if we can schedule some later time in the future. Yeah, so just to give you a sense of Sama Sama, we're a family cooperative that has offered youth programming for the last 12 years. Serving up to between 35 and 40 youth in a very unique setting. We're all outdoors. That is very intentional because we see the source of our healing and restorative practice in connecting with our ancestral practices that are just deep within us, but we need the space for our youth to experience the outdoors in this way. So it's different from any other outdoor camp. We bring in a multidisciplinary experience from the arts, movement, dance, some food and land. That land and food are significant in the orientation of our work. And so that's why, in part, I thought this grant was a really good match for us. A great one that might be of good alignment. I said we were serving, and we've been in the program for 13 years, 12 years. We're approaching our 13th, so we're becoming teens in this work. And with that, we have just learned and seen really the impacts of what youth are experiencing in mental health as they approach their teenhood, even though our youths we grow our youth out of our program around ages 12 and 13, we are seeing that they still have needs. And so we've had great impact in fostering deep relationships with their youth and in them deepening their identities as Filipino Americans in the diaspora, and really rooted in understanding the heritage values that they have that can equip them for their own lives and identity. And with that, we still see that life goes on, and they need, as they approach their teen years, more, they need more. And they need more that's customized to their experience. And so we want to expand our program in these coming years to really address and give a unique experience to this middle school, teenage age bracket. So we're so excited to be expanding our program, and we have a beautiful model that's developing to address these needs that includes 4 outdoor experiences every year that will give our youth experiences in different outdoor skills, or what we're calling lifeways, things like wildlife tracking, listening to the birds and birding, friction fire, doing some storytelling within the outdoor experience, and really just drawing in a lot of the ways that the earth and nature and the environment and the land can teach us. And so we are hoping that this program, these experiences that we can offer youth, can be a source for them to draw on and build their own resilience as they move into their teenage and adult years. Really seeing that the environment and the land is a source of strength for them that they can go to anytime in their lifetime. And with the Tahoe Conservancy offering resources to make the Tahoe Basin accessible to underserved, underrepresented populations. It just seemed like a really beautiful fit to see if our program can, if this program can be brought to the Tahoe Basin and also be supported in this way.
So where's the program right now? You said that you're in the Bay Area. Where exactly is that?
Yeah, we serve families all over the East Bay and San Francisco. Our programming mostly happens in Oakland, but we take many field trips that bring us out to different areas, nearby to deepen our work and experience for the kids. That's really aligned with the themes that we explore every year.
So you want to take it out, you want to do some field trips to the Tahoe Basin? Is that?
Yeah, well, the current vision is to take 4 backpacking trips or outdoor trips that are much more immersive than what we do during the summer camp. So this would be outside of that 4-week summer camp every year. This would help keep an ongoing context in touch with our youth throughout the school year, so that while they're immersed in their daily lives, they have an experience that touches them back to the ways in which we hope they will grow and be fortified. And so we're looking at 4 experiences a year for this teenage population. And
so that for trips to the Tahoe area?
Yes. Yeah.
I see. Okay. All right. It sounds like it might work. Might be of interest to us, but I'm missing a lot of information here. I don't quite understand the importance, why this needs to happen with the youth. You said you're working with 35 to 40 youth, and I think you said the Filipino culture, but I don't get the sense of why that would be an important piece for them.
Right. No, thank you for naming that. I think that's that is sort of the countercultural context that we're trying to work within. We believe that when youth are rooted and understand their culture and their cultural values that have guided our elders, our ancestors, that they can be fortified in facing the world that maybe does not look like them on the daily. So we try to create a very different experience at summer camp that both honors their current lives, but also reminds them and really gives them deeper connections to the arts, the ways in which that their culture has lived in the Philippines and also here. And there are different cultural values that we have uncovered for them that have us relate to the environment in a very particular way. Just one example is a word called tabi-tabi po. That's a Filipino word that says, that means, may I come in? And with that, that's something that we invite our youth all the time as a daily practice. When they enter any natural space, that they're saying tabi-tabi po before they pluck any plant. If they do that, tabi-tabi po. So there's this honoring that's really rooted in this cultural understanding that, we are visitors to this land and this nature. And yeah, so it's like that.
I'm gonna have to stop you, Rizlin. I have to go to a meeting. Thank you very much. It sounds interesting, and I'd love to hear more about the specific. Give me some examples, because this is countercultural, as you say, and us, as our foundation, we don't really have that much understanding of the cultural heritage that you're trying to bring to the young people. So I'd love to have some more context for someone who's not part of your community, and I'm also really interested in how this work could be connecting to our work in the Tahoe Basin, like how your work would connect to our strategic vision that you can find in our RFP. So Thank you very much. And feel free to, if there's something, I'm open to getting a brief LOI from you as part of our RFP process. So just make sure that you're very clear about those few things, and that would be great for us.
Great. It was a pleasure to meet with you, and thank you for that very specific feedback. I'm confident we can answer those questions and create a vision that seems very well aligned with the work that you're doing.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye.
Bye. Okay. All right. Nice job, Rosalind. All right. So let's take a moment just to kind of hear from you, maybe 1 minute. How did you feel? How did it work for you?
Oh, goodness gracious. It's really tricky to decide what to focus on.
Yes.
So I think, there's, the more planning and more research, I could come up with a maybe more even succinct script. I think
Yeah.
one thing that's tricky is, sometimes a funder might have more questions and might not give you, or might not leave as much spaciousness to talk, and so you're being maybe more responsive to what they're asking as opposed to laying something out. And so I feel like maybe I won't, some conversations I've had, it's, you go in with a full script, but then maybe you can only share this much because it's a
Right.
quick conversation and there's very specific questions that they have. So thank you. You gave me a lot of time to kind of like be spacious about what I talked, but then I also found like, oh, I gotta to reel it in here or add a little more here.
Yeah. I encourage people to think about having a 5-minute conversation. Or I gave you a little bit of extra time because I know this was, a first time. But yes, I think if you stick to the FIRST as your kind of outline of what you want to talk about, I think that will help you rein it in a little bit. As I was the funder in that conversation, I just will underscore, I was interested in the importance part of it. Again, this is one of the hardest parts for us in the nonprofit sector because we know the importance of our work. We live it every day, but an outsider is not going to be in the same place. So they need for you to spell it out for them. I felt like the results, you were starting to get there. You talked about deepening youth identities in the diaspora. I wanted to know a little bit more what that looks like. How is that being measured? You gave me a little bit of detail about your solution, but again, I pulled out, I want to know how that's related to our work in the Tahoe Basin. So I got you to talk about the 4 outdoor experiences in the Tahoe Basin. And then the track record, you talked about that you've been doing it for 13 years. That's a good start, but I wanted to know, like, what does that mean over 13 years? What have you seen? All right, well, why don't I'm hopeful that people typed in a little bit of their own feedback into the chat. Did that happen, Aurora?
No, not yet. But if folks have
Okay.
observations
I
from
invite you to do that.
please share them in the chat.
Meanwhile, I am going to invite you to now take your turn to do this little exercise in a breakout room. Aurora is putting people randomly into groups. And if you can put the PowerPoint up. Yes, there you go. Okay. So in your group, right before.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Okay. So I'm hoping that in your group, there will be one person who would like to be a brave soul and talk about their FIRST. Then there will be one person in your group who's going to be the grant maker, who's going to listen. And then the rest of the people will be observers. They're going to be thinking about what are they noticing, what has come from this conversation that they'd like to pull out. So do we have any observations that we can read off now about Rosalind's practice? If not, we'll go into the role plays.
Tim, could you catch those while I'm doing the
Yeah,
breakout?
we didn't get much in the chat. Chris did say, great job, Rosalyn. I would suggest starting with a brief description of who your org is and what it does. I think you mentioned it, but it was a bit later on in the conversation. That's the one we got there.
It looks
Okay.
like Adam has something to share. Adam, would you like to share?
Yes, sorry, my hands are paralyzed, so it's hard to do the chat.
Not at all.
So the observation I would say from my experience in talking with funders is being more brief or concise with how you're describing your work. And what I've found is helps, especially when I'm nervous about something or about the conversation, is leading into asking them questions and getting them talking more. And that gives an opportunity for you to like chime in and, you know, it for their words to trigger your thoughts on it to keep the conversation going a little bit better instead of just like trying to keep talking, because that's kind of the natural tendency is to want to just keep talking and keep going because like somebody's got an ear that we're listening to
Yeah.
or that's listening to us. So it's like here everything, and that's really hard to stop doing, and I still do it myself. And so that would be my kind of suggestion, I would say, but kind of try to get them telling you what they want from you rather than trying to tell them everything you think they want you to hear.
Right. Yes. What is of specific interest to them? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to go into role plays?
And I'd be willing to be the grant seeker in the role play.
Wonderful.
Thank you everyone for doing that and welcome back. What I'm going to ask is people who played the grant seeker role, if you could type in the chat GS : and then just one line of what you learned from the exercise. For people who were that was for grant seekers, grant makers, put GM : and one line about your biggest learning. And everyone else put O : for observer, and then what you learned from this experience. Again, in one line. And as you're doing that, I will tell you that in my experience, talking about your work over time, it gets clearer and clearer and more concise and smoother. And you also learn from what people ask you. This feedback and practice is crucial. And I often do it when I'm coaching my clients. So I encourage you to do this exercise again, at least one more time with other folks.
Yeah, we've got some interesting comments.
Great.
Craig was a grant maker and said, surprisingly hard to put myself in their shoes, but a good exercise to try and think more about what they want and not just what I want, money. Some value in playing the other role too.
Yes.
Other folks are saying the first structure is very helpful, but I have a long way to go in terms of actually following it in a crisp, concise way. We have to get on with our descriptions, able to put forth our major need. I should start the conversation to allow the funder to have a full understanding of what issues I'm attempting to resolve and what does that look like.
Yes. Good. Great. I hope it sounds like people got value in whatever role they played. So wonderful. All right, let's give people are there any other ones that we can share before I move on?
Have concise bullet points. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Can we move on to the next slide? Okay, All right, so I'm just going to go through these last slides quickly because I know we're getting close to the time of that we need to end. Remember to customize your proposal to the person that you're speaking to, your funder, right? So again, this goes back to all the research that you've done, and this little role play will help you, hopefully show you that your specific funder has specific needs and interests, and that's what you want to speak to. Moving on to the next slide. Another important piece of that is you have to highlight your shared values and concerns, what between you and the funders. So get in their mindset as much as you can, focus on what they care about the most, as we saw from the role play. Okay, moving on to the next slide. As you know by now, you have to demonstrate your fit, your match, and how you align well to what the funder is looking for. Going on to the next one. Choose the right amount to request. And I'm not going to dwell too long on this. We can talk about this next time. But these are just some general outlines in terms of the type of money request that you can make. Again, we can talk about it next time. All right, next. And consider their style. Some funders are more official and formal than others. So when you're doing your research on the funder, you're going to learn more about what they're like what kind of language are they using, what is their culture. You want to reflect that back at them. Okay, I'm going to show my screen here to share the workbook that I've been referring to. Okay. And hopefully that works out. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Here we go. All right. In the table, can you see the table of contents?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. Here's the table of contents as we talked about, and the spreadsheet that you want to look at for the funder prospecting is right here, the link, number 14. Let's go down to page 23. And this is the part of the workbook for today, part 2. The steps to prepare that we talked about, all the 5 steps are listed here, and opportunities for you to fill in information. Sources for funder prospect research. This is the list of databases that I mentioned. Some are free, some are paid. The funder conversation worksheet will help you as you continue in your role plays. And again, with the FIRST outlined here, and then the sample script that Rosalind was referring to. And these are just more information about the role play, few pointers to keep in mind, etc. Some more worksheets for the role plays, and then part 3 we're going to be talking about next week. So I wanted to make sure that you're aware of all of those resources there. Can we go back to the PowerPoint?
Oh, sorry, Sally, I set it away because we were pretty much to the question.
Yeah, that's where we are.
It says questions. Are there other questions?
Yeah, are there any brief? And if there are questions in the chat, we can talk about them next time, just like we did today. We can open with answers to those questions. So if you feel like you want to add a question, I know we're at time, but please add it in the chat and we can refer to it next time.
Yeah, we've been collecting questions from everyone. So if you have questions, please do include them in the chat.
Great. And if you can go to the slide with the next slide was going to ask you one new thing you can do in the next 30 days to improve your grant writing. If you can think of something right now that maybe came from today, that would be lovely to type in.
Yeah, and if you have a second to fill out the survey, I just dropped it into the chat. And give us feedback on today's session. That is very helpful. We really appreciate it.
Exactly.
Also, I will just note that the workbook is up on our website. The recordings from the first session are up on the website, and I will be working on this recording and getting it up there earlier. I apologize. It took me a little bit longer with this first week. I had to relearn how to edit videos, but I've got it now, so I can move it along. Wonderful. And yes, we will send out an email copy of all of those resources as well. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you, Dahlia, for your guidance, and Elizabeth and Marcy for your support with the translation. Next week, we're going to be talking about budgets and financials for your proposals, another tricky topic that I know can be very confusing. So hopefully some of you can join us for that session as well. I think we can leave it there for today. Thank you all so much. And thank you again to Rosalind for
Yeah.
putting yourself out there and being our example role play person. That was phenomenal.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks again, everyone, especially Rosalind, and we'll see you next week.